Welcome to Wright Studio. This is the online tutorial for the leather wrist cuff. This is the cuff you need for some genuine rugged style. It's a great one for beginners with very little sewing. Go to my profile to link to my site where I sell patterns if you haven't yet purchased it. If you've purchased and downloaded the digital pattern, let's get started. If you're a beginner leather crafter, I recommend watching the video all the way through once before you start making the cuff. I've included a tutorial for dyeing the leather in this video if you want the advice. If not, simply skip ahead to keep making the cuff. Begin by going to where you saved the file. After downloading it, double-click to open it. Inside you'll have the pattern and various pages. There might be a hardware list and a materials list and instructions, and below those you will have the different pages of the pattern. There's a key to the pattern that looks like this, what the pattern will look like once the pages are all taped together. Then go to File, Print, and I like to go to Properties and make sure that grayscale and black is selected so I don't use a bunch of color ink. Click OK, and then make sure your scale is set to none or 100%. This is crucial or your pages will not turn out correctly. Then click OK and print the file. So in this one, there's a materials list and assembly instructions. And then I printed the 8-inch cuff to make this out of. I didn't print all the different sizes. You can make sure not to print all the sizes, just the sizes that you intend to make. And using a metal straight edge and a sharp utility blade, the next thing to do is to cut out the pattern. So when cutting out the pattern, what we're doing is leaving some white on the edge. We're cutting close to the black line, but not up to it. We're leaving some white on the edge. And it doesn't have to be exact at this point. On this one, I'm cutting on the dotted line because there are two pieces that need to be taped together, and the dotted line is where they'll meet. So these are the straps. Cut out those two, the 4 parts that will become 2 parts when we tape them together. And then these are the strap keepers. Using some standard masking tape from the hardware store, we're going to tape these two together. Line them up carefully. And I'm actually going to now trim right up to the black line on these. And I'll demonstrate why shortly. But we don't need the extra white. We just want it right up to the black line on the straps. We'll do that on both straps. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the cuff bottom and we're going to throw that one away right now. We're not going to use that. There's going to be almost no sewing. That's for if you're using thin leather and you want to make it thicker. But right now we're going to use a 7 to 8 inch leather for the cuff part. And we're going to cross out the center holes for the spikes and the holes around the edges. We're not going to sew any of that. We are just going to keep the holes for the rivets. And I've circled those right there. That's the only thing we're going to punch holes in. So I've got my 7 to 8 ounce leather here, and we're going to tape this down with the masking tape. And it's important to be able to see through the masking tape. It needs to be a transparent style masking tape so that you can see the black line when you're ready to cut. Next step, I'm going to use my punching board. And I'm going to use my 3mm punch because that is the right size for my rivets that I'm using. And first I'm going to use some tea candle wax, and that just helps to smooth out the punch. Okay, now using the 3mm punch and my leather mallet, we're just going to punch these 8 holes. Because this is a thick leather, it just kind of stick when it gets in there. Okay, once those holes are punched, it is now time to use a sharp utility knife and cut out the pattern. So now I'm going to cut right along the black edge. And because this is pretty thick leather, you need to push hard and go slow. And you may need to do it more than once. You don't have to make a perfect cut the very first time. You can go through it 2 to 3 times if that's what you need to do. I like to use a metal straight edge when cutting straight lines. It just helps the edge, the cut be very straight. And because this is thick leather, it can take several cuts. And sometimes there's a spot or two that needs to be cut again. So that's it. Now I'm going to give some decorative lines. This is a stitch marker, and what it does is it cuts a really thin strip out of the surface of the leather. And I've got it set to about 4 millimeters. And this isn't necessary. This is just a way of decorating your leather if you'd like. And so I'm just going all the way around wrist cuff, kind of carving in this little edge. Making sure my lines meet at the corners. Now the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to use an edge beveler. Because this is such a thick piece of leather, the edges are quite square. And so this edge beveler just makes a chamfer. And I'm not going to do it on both sides, just the front side. And so this is a number 2 edge beveler. And it's just going to cut a little chamfer to help round out the edges. And this isn't necessary if you don't have this tool, but it's just a standard thing that's done in leatherwork if you're new to leatherwork and haven't seen this before. Okay, now we're going to punch out the holes on the strap. And so what I've done is I've used a strap cutter, which you can look up. It's a tool that cuts a nice, straight, even strap. If you don't have a strap cutter, you can tape this onto your leather and cut it out the same way I did with the main body of the cuff. But if you've got a strap cutter or can cut a nice straight piece like this, this is a little bit easier way to get the straps. And it's very consistent. And so I'm just carefully lining up the pattern onto the pre-cut strap. And the straps are not 7 to 8 ounce leather. They are 4 to 5 ounce leather. They are lighter. They don't need to be as heavy. I'm using my tea candle wax again to kind of lubricate the surface for the punch. And I'm going to use a 3mm punch and my leather mallet. So there's the holes for the rivets, and I used the 3mm punch to punch out the ends of the slot for the buckle tongue. And now these holes at this end are the holes for the buckle tongue to strap the when you strap the buckles in. Now I'm using a half round to cut the end. This is a straight punch, and I'm using that to cut the rest of the slot. So I used the 3mm round punch and then a straight to cut the rest of the slot for the buckle tongue. And this is a 1/4 round. And this will just help give me the profile that I'm looking for the end of the buckle. You can freehand cut it as well if you'd like. That's the completed strap. And you do that twice. Once again, I'm using my stitch groover to cut some lines into the surface just as decoration. They don't provide any function other than they're part of the decoration. I'm just going all the way around the strap, and I'll do that for both straps. I'm just cleaning up the corners. And I'm going to go ahead and do it also on the strap keepers. Okay, at this point, I'm going to demonstrate a dyeing technique. If you're not interested, then you can skip this part. But this, if you're new to leather working or haven't seen this style of dyeing technique, this can be interesting to you. So I am using a light brown dye, 5-inch dye, and I'm putting it on just a clean white t-shirt rag. And I've got it bunched up in my hand, and then I'm just dabbing it across the surface. And it creates an interesting texture. And once it dries, it does tend to lighten up a little bit. So you can see that there's a texture, it gives it some depth. And I'm going to do the back. The back you won't really see once it's on your wrist, but I'm just not going to leave it undyed. And now this is the chocolate color, so it's quite a bit darker than the light brown. And I'm going to do the same thing, except this time I'm going to go around just the edges. It's kind of giving it an antiqued patina style look to it. Like the edges have been touched and worn a lot, and the center the dye has been rubbed and worn off. Or maybe it's a bit of a sunburst pattern, if you're familiar with that from woodworking. And I'm going to fill in the grooves, the stitch grooves. I'm just going to use a Q-tip to get all those and make sure the dye gets down inside, because it's lower than the surface. The dye didn't get inside when I was using the rag. And I'm going to use the Q-tip to color the edges. Make sure that they've got a nice good dye color on the edges as well. And for consistency, I'm going to go ahead and do the back side as well. The back side is the rough flush side. You can see that it's not smooth like the front side. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do it for the straps as well. Starting with the light. I'm going to color in the stitch grooves. This time I'm using the light brown for the stitch grooves. Color the back the same way. And I'm going to use the dark chocolate to do the edges. And now I'm going to add some more of that patina aged look with the dark chocolate on the edges. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the second, as well as the strap keepers. The strap keepers I just went ahead and did with the light brown. Now I'm going to use neat's foot oil, because once you've added dye, it can tend to dry out the leather, especially if it's an alcohol-based dye. And neat's foot oil softens the leather, and it also takes the molecules of the dye and kind of pulls them into the leather, so it helps it soak in a little bit deeper. And will also change the color darker. It won't be a lot, and especially if you wait a while, it tends to lighten up afterwards before we seal it. But it immediately turns the dye job a little bit darker. And it is important to add leather dye, or excuse me, the leather oil, the neat's foot leather oil after the dyeing. And you can see I have to do it several coats because it just soaks it right in. The leather's been dried out by the dyeing process. And veg tan leather sometimes can come fairly dry. It has less oils put into it than an oil tan leather or a retanned leather. A retanned leather is a veg tan leather that is then oil tanned. Okay, once the oil has had time to soak in, at this point I left it sit overnight and it soaked in. We are going to use a burnishing compound called toconol, and I'm going to add it to the back because the back is a rough flesh side and it's not very smooth, and it has some of the fibers that poke out from the flesh. And I'm going to use this burnishing compound and this glass slicker. And that's just going to help lock down the rough fibrous side. So this is an optional step. If you've got a different kind of leather, sometimes they come a little bit smoother, and this isn't a necessary step. But this particular leather that I bought was fairly rough on the flesh side. So we're going to add this burnishing compound, and it will help lock down those loose fibers. And then we're also going to add it to the edges. We're going to burnish those edges with a wood slicker. So what burnishing the edges does is it uses pressure and friction and this compound toconol to push the fibers down and make a smooth and more finished surface. So here's my wood slicker. And you don't push very hard. What you do is you use the friction, you go back and forth. If you push too hard, you can kind of mushroom the edges and it'll make them push out a little bit. So you want to slide back and forth with the friction. And that's what really does the job of burnishing. And burnishing with toconol is pretty easy. You don't have to go too intense. Veg tan can be burnished with just water and some other compounds, and they take a little bit more effort. But the toconol soaks in and does a lot of the work for you. So now I'm just going to use a slightly damp sponge and some clean water, and I'm going to get rid of the excess toconol and punch it through my rivet holes using my awl, and just clean it all off with the excess with a dry t-shirt type rag. And that will take a little bit of time to dry before you can proceed to the next step. Okay, I have done the burnishing and polishing with the straps as well. And then I went ahead and added a seal coat, which is optional. I use an EcoFlow seal coat that can be put on with a wet sponge. There's lots of different kinds of seal coats, so I won't demonstrate that. If you're interested, you can do some research on that. But the seal coat adds a little bit of water repellency. So now assembly step 1 is to stitch together the ends of the strap keepers. So the strap keepers are like your belt. You have a belt with the buckle, and it has a strap keeper that you slide the end of the belt through. And so this is essentially the same on a smaller scale. And this will be the only sewing involved. You just need 2 little stitches to stitch together these strap keepers. You only need 1 needle, a little bit of thread. Now tie a basic square knot at the back of those 2 stitches. And I'm going to use a thread burner to cut and seal off the ends. You could also use just a pair of thread scissors and a lighter to do the same thing. Then you smash together the threads and then press down on the strap keeper to make it flatter. Go ahead and do the same thing for the second one. Okay, steps 2 and 3. This will be installing the strap keeper and the buckle. So insert the buckle, put the buckle's tongue through the slot that we cut. And we're going to slide the strap keeper on. And then fold over the strap and line up the rivet holes. So there's 4 rivet holes that will hold 2 rivets. I'm using double cap snap rivets, so they hold in place a little bit while you're positioning them. If I can get it pushed down. And then I'm using this rivet setter. It is a lever arm rivet setter. You can use a manual little rivet setter tool if you want. That is cheaper. It comes with just a bar and a base that you hammer the rivet into. So make sure the strap keeper is between the 2 rivets, so that will hold it in place and keep it from sliding. Just making sure both rivets are nice and snug. And you do that twice for both straps. Okay, the next step, assembly step 4, is to rivet the strap to the body of the wrist cuff. So we're going to put the 4 rivets in, on the back. Set the strap on top. Line up the holes. Add the rivet caps. And use your preferred method of rivet setting. And repeat for the second strap. So that rivet came defective, that rivet cap. So I had to find another one. You saw me struggling there. It was bent. But rivets come in the hundreds and thousands, so I've got another rivet cap. Set the rivets in the same way as before. And your wrist cuff is complete. It will probably be fairly stiff, and you'll need to bend it and shape it. It goes like this with the buckles. You have a complete, rather handsome looking wrist cuff. That's what it looks like on my wrist. You can push the buckles on the front, on the back, whatever you prefer. Thanks for watching.